Alberta in 2025 is not the Alberta that I grew up in, not even close. Like it's so if I wish we could have done this in 1990, but like I'm worried that the demographics that there literally is 1 million people that have only been here for 2-3 years. Like that's a fact, right? Like it's a huge percent of our population's only been here a very short time. And for them, like if you came here from India or God knows where else, as far as you're concerned, man, life is good. It's actually surprising how many people I encounter in my day-to-day life that go, you guys are worried about nothing, man. Life is good. I'm like, wow, okay. So that worries me.
Yeah.
Like it, you know, that and then
Well, that's
and then
by
King
design.
Carney can just
It's by design, right?
yeah, totally. And Carney can say a whole bunch of things without ever having to act on it. Like he could say he can promise the end of the world for the next 18 months, which I think he's kind of doing. And then you know, and not just Carney. I mean, I'm deep in that separatist movement. The attacks online are vicious. Like and we haven't seen anything yet. I mean, if this really starts to get momentum, the other side will mobilize against us from all place, from everywhere.
That's a huge thing. That's a huge thing, Marty, and it's something that we've noticed in. I mean, take any any conservative or libertarian talking point over the last decade. If there's one thing that's universal, it's that when a leftist gets it in their head that they need to oppose something, they will find a way to organize 1,000 people overnight to your 100 people that are committed activists for the other side.
Welcome back to another episode of the Critical Compass. I'm James. This is Mike, and we've got our special guest, Marty Belanger, also known as Martyupnorth, here today. And today we're going to be talking about a few different things. Let it be Marty's recent CBC interview that never really materialized. And we will be unpacking a bit of the advancements in the Alberta independence movements. So, Marty, how have you been? It's been a busy month for you.
Yeah, actually, I've been good. I'm I was a little depressed after the last time we talked. I think it was right after the election. So the outcome of the election wasn't what I wanted for. A little bit down, but I got past that. But right now I'm 100% refreshed. I just come back from like a 4-day, 5-day hike. So that for me just re-energized. So if I'm a little hyper right now, that's why.
You're full of all that mountain air.
Yeah, it does. Actually, I'm full of mountain air, but I am also a little bit hurting. It's a really fascinating thing, right? When you do these long, if you don't mind, I'll talk about it for a few seconds. I mean,
please.
Like when the hikes I do are pretty. Yeah, the hikes I do are pretty long, right? So this hike was like 4 nights, 5 days, and it's it's 80 kilometers, and there's definitely a survival mode aspect to it. I'm pretty far from my car at some point. I mean, at some point I'm 40 kilometers from my car and I'm solo. So the body knows it and the body's hurting and the mind won't let the body hurt. Like I don't feel any pain. It's really cool. I can be on day and by day 3, 4, 5, I'm actually physically hurting my body, but the brain refuses to acknowledge that. And you wake up in the morning and you feel good and you keep on going. The day after I get back and I sleep in my soft mattress, or the next day afterwards, when I wake up, it's like the brain finally says, okay, now you're going to feel all that pain and all that hurt that I was blocking. Here it is. And so like, I'm okay now, but yesterday, holy smokes, I was sore. And then the other thing that's really fascinating is our bodies, how they respond to missing certain nutrients. Cause I'm calorie deficient when I'm out there. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. I mean, I'm burning 3,000-4,000 calories a day and I can't transport that on my back. So I'm deficient. And when I get back, I don't fight the cravings. Like yesterday, I opened the fridge. It's like, oh, milk. And like my body's like literally saying milk, grab the milk. And my wife's sitting there looking at me going like, what are you doing? I'm drinking milk. She's like, yeah, you just downed a gallon. I'm like, yeah, well, my body's telling me I need milk. So yeah, it's really fun.
You were vitamin D
experience.
Had a vitamin D deficiency or something, maybe.
Have you ever?
I don't know if it's a vitamin D or if it's just the bones themselves and all the micro fissures in my bones, and the body's going like, you better plug those real quick, get some calcium.
Have you tried the pemmican route? Because you can get basically a day's worth of calories in a pound.
Oh, pemmican, pemmican, and you know what? I've never made pemmican. I don't even think I've ever had it. Like, you're talking real pemmican, like
it's
ground
easy to make.
with,
I've made it before, and
he makes it.
Yeah.
He makes it for his long road trips because he's psycho like that. But
yeah, there's times where I'm traveling where I'm just I'm like, if I just want to have a bunch of meat on me, that's good and dried, and like it's not the most delicious. If you like beef,
well, next
like,
time we're
great,
meeting in person, I want some of your pemmican. Yeah, no, I mean, you know, when I'm out there on those trails, I'm following in the footsteps of David Thompson. I've read a lot of the books, the history of David Thompson, and those trappers and whatnot. Pemmican was a mainstay. They used to carry it. I think it was 50-kilogram blocks, like giant blocks, were made in Manitoba, and then they would cut off a piece of about a pound in the morning, soak it in water. Their days started like 4 a.m. and start paddling while their pemmican was soaking. And then, fascinating.
There's also ways of making soup out of it. Like they would use it as a concentrated like soup stock and then add in a couple fresh ingredients. And then there's plenty of fat, plenty of protein, and you've got yourself a meal just out of that.
You know what? Just weird that we would talk about this because so pemmican, I think, is made with what? Saskatoon berries generally? Was that the traditional way of making it?
I think that sounds right.
I think it's traditional as Saskatoon berries, but you could make it with moose berries. And right now I read a story the other day, like the G7's coming to Kananaskis, and they're worried about bears, and they went and killed all these plants where that the bears feed on. I'm like, oh, what are you guys doing? Like, what are you guys doing? Like, like that's so insane. Yeah.
Just leave it to the bureaucrats to come up with the dumbest solution to the non-problems that they think are like it's. Yeah. Perfect segue.
Anyways.
So you left that, you were recovering, and you jumped headfirst into some interviews. That's been your week. After
actually,
your recovery.
Yeah. I guess while I was gone. So what happened? Was it Tuesday that there was a ministers' meeting it was here in Alberta, right? The big ministers' meeting, or first ministers' meeting. All the premiers met with Carney, and then the hot topic was pipelines. Or what did they do? They showed up with their wish list, right, for Carney, something like that.
I think that sounds right.
Yeah, they're talking pipelines, and Daniel's sitting. They put her right on the edge, like right on the side. Like they couldn't even put her like somewhere in the middle. Just like you think she'd be more of a.
You know why they do that? Like, I don't know if I believe it or not, but there's a it's called precedent, right? There's an order of how people sit around all tables, and so when premiers are meeting together, it's not based on seniority, like who's been in power the longest or the size of their economy. It's based on when the provinces joined Confederation. So Saskatchewan and Alberta joined in 1905, and then Newfoundland in 49, I think. So then they're always sitting farthest away. Yeah, good observation, but that's what the. Yeah. Well, anyway, if it's based in that was the big meeting. Yeah.
Go ahead.
It's nonsensical. It's still disrespectful in a way, right? Like, so it is what's fundamentally flawed with our country. It's like we're going to talk about that. I mean, I'm a separatist, and because I think Alberta will never get a fair deal. And then you have it right there on display. Like, hey, you're Alberta, you joined last. And so you sit at the end of the table. It doesn't matter that we're an economic powerhouse. You sit over there. Like it's not based on fairness. It's based on these archaic traditions and rules. So, and we're always going to be, anyways, we're digressing, or we'll come back to that. But
so when you jumped into the Belly Beast, you sat down with, or like you had an interview with CBC. Like
they called me. First of all, they call me. I'm just getting home, kind of thing, recovering. I got this message, and I called them, and they said, like, I've been on CBC before, and I have a background in oil and gas. I worked on several big pipelines, so they wanted me in studio. They wanted to talk to me, and I'm like, okay, sounds interesting. Where do you want me? they said, can you make it to the studio? So they had me drive to, just almost downtown Calgary and be in studio for an interview with a guy. And I thought it was going to be live on the air, but basically they were recording me and recording my dialogue with him. The famous journalist from Montreal, a guy named Patrice Roy. And I knew that the audience was going to be Quebec, and the questions were. So I went in, and the questions were leading. They had a narrative, but I did my best to answer the questions. Like the questions were typical, like does it make sense? Does it make sense to build pipelines? Isn't peak oil right around the corner? So I'm like, I got a great answer for that. I'm like, no, peak oil is like, you guys have been saying that for the last 40 years. As far as I'm concerned, we're consuming 100 million barrels of oil a day, and it's been climbing since 1970. And I don't see peak oil until blah, blah. Okay, well then does it make sense with climate change? And I'm like, okay, well, let's talk climate change. I'm an engineer, and I just finished doing a hike. So, and my life's work has been to reconcile the fact that all human activity has an impact on the environment, which I love, but I'm trying as an engineer. I recognize that all human activity will have an impact, and it's my job to minimize those impacts. I said, and building a pipeline is no different than building a power line or building a hydroelectric dam or whatever. I mean, I can play their game all day long. So the interview was about 20 minutes back and forth. And then the producer on air said, "Hey, you did a great job." And I was alone in my studio, and the other party was in Montreal, right? And then somebody, when I opened the door, whoever got me settled in, they were there. But then when I opened the door, when the interview was done, there was actually other people there. One other guy from Calgary is like, "Holy shit, Marty's on the air," kind of thing. And he came to talk to me, and he's like, "Same thing. I heard you. You did a great job." And I was all pumped up, man, all pumped up. And then 24 hours later, I saw the documentary that they made from on pipelines, and I had 18-second snippet in there, and then they had all these other experts from, not even from Canada. Like their number one expert that was most quoted in the article was a guy from Europe saying that there's an overabundance of pipelines or an overabundance of hydrocarbons. Peak oil has been hit, blah, 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 blah. So somebody who agreed with all their questions was featured.
What a joke. How long did you say the interview was for that you were actually recording?
20 minutes of recording, like
Wow.
lots of good questions. In fact, like to me, it literally felt like I didn't know this. I thought, okay, we're on air right now. Like, I'm talking back and forth.
Right.
And, but no, we weren't on air. And then the producer who called me, who convinced me to go down to the studio, I reached out to her like yesterday. I'm like, where's the footage? What happened? Blah, blah, radio silence.
Classic.
Which, no, and it is classic, but I want to step back just one thing. That was CBC Montreal, CBC Quebec, right? Which weirdly, the night of the election, maybe you guys, I don't know if you guys remember this or saw it, but the night of the federal election on April 29th, in the days, the whole 6 hours before the election and during the election, I actually had a crew of 3 people from CBC in my house. So they called me, same thing. They called me in advance, CBC Montreal. That one was in French, right? I speak French. So they call me and they reached out. They're like, "We'd like to interview you because you're a separatist and we want your reaction on the night of the election." And I literally told those guys, on whatever, April 27th, I'm like, "You're out of your mind." I'm like, "You're going to come to Alberta and record me for like 10 minutes to do a documentary of some sort?" And
they're like, "Don't worry, we've got lots of government money
spending." That's exactly what they said. "Don't worry about it. We got lots of government money, and that's part of our mandate." And at that time, I'm like, "Oh, okay. So you guys are playing this mandate now. Like you're gonna do a couple of feel good Alberta stories because you don't want to get defunded too quickly." But those guys came over and they were open minded. I toured them through like the beef footage we got. I took them through the oil field nearby and we talked. Then the next morning, they said, do you have fellow people that you can invite? I'm like, yeah, I reached out on Twitter. Anyways, that documentary was 3 minutes and 40 seconds. And I texted those guys, go, thank you. Like you actually did a proper documentary on what it's like to be an Alberta separatist living in the country. And so you can't paint everybody with the same brush. The guys from this week were definitely had an agenda, and I didn't fit their agenda.
That's one thing I've noticed with we were even going to some of those like parental rights, the Million March for Kids protests, and I was following closely some of the CBC coverage, and the local CBC, like the smaller the town, the better the coverage is generally. Yeah. Like it feels like the agenda's not, I don't know, whatever chain of command they have, like they seem to have a little bit more autonomy, just like focus on local issues. Yeah. And if they're connected with the community, then often you will have somebody just trying to fulfill the role of the media, which is share what's going on with the people around you because you're part of one big community. And I think when you get to larger cities and larger scopes, you'll run into more of the ideological bend where I know from editing video myself that you can stitch together a lot of words and you can craft a message out of something that was either incoherent or didn't have a message or a totally different thing. It's really easy to
actually. I've seen people take full blown movies and just cut the movies and reshuffle the movies and transform a movie into something different. You go, wow, how'd you do that? Like it's
The Shining.
John Wick is
The Shining being a inspirational story about an aspiring writer.
There you go. Exactly. So, but back to your point, the guys who came here on election day and did the 3 minute and 40-second interview, he told me that, the three of them flying out here and staying in hotels and whatever had a $10,000 budget to do a 3 minute and 40-second video.
Christ.
I was like, wow. I'm like, I could do Martyupnorth videos on YouTube for an entire year and then some for that kind of money. Like, wow. And that wasn't including their salaries or the gear they brought. That was just what they expense, their hotels and their flights.
So billion's being spent really well is what you're saying.
Yeah. So I'm a sucker for punishment. No, not a sucker for punishment. I am a believer in our cause. So I am going tomorrow at 8:00. They call me again, CBC. And when this one rang, I was a little. It's CBC Vancouver, and pipelines are still. It's the big talk right now. It's the big talk. And so tomorrow morning on radio live, I'm going on with CBC Vancouver to talk about Northern Gateway and other potential projects.
Nice. Do you know what time that's
on?
I
mean, and it's at 8:00 my time, 7:00 their time. But that one's in French. It's Far West. It's a play on words. But I will rebroadcast that one. But just back to the other guys who had me on the show like 2 days ago. I mean, I was director of pipelines operations for TransCanada. Like it was my team that designed Keystone and Keystone XL. It was my team that built Keystone and operated it. I designed Energy East, not me personally, but my team designed Energy East. And then I worked on the Goldboro project in Nova Scotia. You literally have on air, the guy, you could put my title on there, Director of Liquid Pipelines. And nope, they went to another expert who had not even Canadian.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's go to a European cosmopolitan for their insight.
Yeah. It was crazy. So actually, maybe now you got me. Maybe I will follow up. I'll cut that interview and say this is the one I didn't do, and what do you guys think? Because it was brutal.
Yeah, if you can get your hands on that footage, that'd be great. Or in the future, if you don't know if it's live or not, there's $100 handheld recorders that you can just like bring with to
slap
get
it in your
audio
breast pocket.
Yeah, like uncut audio would be partially just to have that backup for yourself, and then being able to say, well, send a link of like, here's what CBC posted and here's the source, and further proof of like, that's how well our tax money is being spent. Like you need
No,
comparison.
I got caught off guard a little bit there because I guess I was giving the CBC this the benefit of the doubt after the crew that came to my house in April. But then, so tomorrow I'm going to be on a different guard. I don't have that software, but the phone will definitely be in my pocket on the table, and I'll hit record perfect. As soon as I'm sitting down. So yeah,
I got a free one for you here, Marty. If you keep doing these CBC interviews and they keep jerking you around, you can change your name for a day too. You can just add one letter to it, and you'd be Martyupnorth.
It's just a sucker for punishment.
Is that just one letter? Yeah, one letter. Okay, or add one letter.
That's right. Yeah,
add one letter.
They'll be careful messing with your username, because apparently, like, I think Twitter won't let you like switch it back right away. Like they don't like you just doing little things every other day. So.
Yeah, don't switch your name and don't change your profile picture. I think you're allowed once every 3 weeks, kind of thing. Yeah.
Well, okay, let's take it to. I know that we're all very curious about this, not so secret, but sort of secret, gathering of the minds that happened in Red Deer very recently regarding some of the leaders, involving some of the leaders in this Alberta separatist movement.
Because
can you shed some light?
Yeah, we posted a video, I think the day before, and our major concerns was, where is the crosstalk?
Yeah.
Where's the coordination? Where's there's a lot of slinging between different groups. Almost like it's a zero-sum game, which is maybe not the best way of thinking about it. Is like, groups coexist and like all have a role to play?
Absolutely. So, I think most people who followed me for a long time kind of know that I do try to stay impartial and not affiliated formally with any group, right? The only group that I'm formally affiliated are the groups that is when I do come time to vote. Like when I'm going to vote, I belong to a group and I'll vote for. So let's say I vote Conservative, but beyond that, I don't belong to any party. I don't belong to I'm not a member of the Alberta Prosperity Project. I'm not a member of any of those groups. And that's on purpose, because that's still, I'm not a journalist. I'm a fact checker, but I'm right leaning, right? I'm an Alberta conservative. Fair to say right now that there's been a growing separatist movement in Alberta for a long time. Some guys, one of the guys in Red Deer who talked about this very well, Michael Wagner was there. But before I get there, the separatist movement is growing, and there's lots of people that are pushing forward with different ways of getting to an independent or sovereign Alberta. And so, roughly speaking, there's people who think that we can just do it the way Danielle Smith wants to do it, a sovereign Alberta within whatever. There's people who believe that we need another party like the Alberta Republican to challenge. There's people like the Alberta Prosperity Project who believe we should just jump forward with a referendum. There's lots of groups like that, and they're not coordinated at this point. And that has me a bit nervous, but it's nervous, but I'll say this. The engineer in me, when I look at Alberta separating is a big proposition. It's a complicated proposal. And in my line of work, many times I was faced with complicated proposals. Actually, in the oil patch, a typical company, a big company like CNRL, for instance, has lots of assets, lots of resources. And at the end of the day, their goal is to just make money. And within the organization, there could be 5-6 teams that have ideas on how to make money. And CNRL will let all those teams do their thing and curate their ideas and keep pushing their ideas, and then bring the ideas together in front of a committee once in a while. And then somebody in a leadership position at CNRL will say, "Oh, I like your idea. I still like yours, but it needs refinement. I don't like that one. You guys are done." And then eventually one idea will dominate. It will gain the most traction or make the most sense, and it'll dominate. But the beauty of a company like CNRL is that you have a guy who's the president or somebody or a committee that says, that's the one we're going with. So what's happening in Alberta right now, I kind of view it that way. I'm not prepared at this point to firmly stand behind one idea and or to dispel other ideas. I'm just happy that they're all progressing. But what I'd like to do at this point is start to help people see pitfalls already of some of their ideas. So the meeting in Red Deer, to be fair, was one group in particular. The meeting in Red Deer was the Alberta Republican Party, who is currently led by Cam Davies, and it's a group of other separatist parties. The remnants of the old Wild Rose Party, the remnants of other parties that are kind of formulating their own agreements, and then they're doing their thing. And their thought is, they have all their reasoning. Their reasoning is Danielle won't do this for us, and without getting into a bunch of detail, they think their way is the best way forward. Their thinking is we need a full blown separatist party to put pressure on the UCP and other groups. So that's what that was in Red Deer. So I went to that, but the real reason I went to Red Deer is because they had some interesting guests. They had Bruce Party from Ontario, who's I think Bruce is a law professor at Queen's University. Mm. He's an Ontarian, but he has a great. He's pushing for Alberta separation. He's promoting it, and he's encouraging us. And he goes as far as saying that that the whole Western world is going down this terrible path, including the U.S. And that if Alberta does this properly, we can actually show the correction for the rest of the world on how nations should get back on track for prosperity. And so that's Bruce's high level pitch, is like, you guys in Alberta have an amazing opportunity. And Bruce is so, and he's an eloquent speaker, well thought out, and an academic. And being an academic also helps because he's got all this background on, Confederation, what happened in the past, and then he studies democracies and things like that in other countries. So I went there mostly to listen to Bruce and to listen to Michael Wagner. I don't know if you guys have ever interviewed Michael Wagner at all. No. He's a book writer. He's a scholar, and same thing. He opened it up. I wish he could have stayed there longer. He was in a hurry. He had another commitment, but he gave us a history lesson on how separatism in Alberta started in 1870, before we even joined, right? Like when we were just a territory of the Hudson's Bay or whatever, the Northwest Company, and then somebody annexed us, and the Louis Riel Rebellion and all of that, and then so he gave a great history lesson. So I went there to listen to that. So I'll just pause for that. I've also been to several Alberta prosperity events, and I've been to other events. So I've been to a lot of events, and I'm watching how they're all moving. I'm a little nervous right now that the Alberta Prosperity Project is moving really, really fast.
Yeah, we've heard that sentiment before about them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there a clear majority? That's the right now.
Is there a clear majority? Yeah, is there a clear majority? You don't get 15 chances at this, right? If you do a referendum and you don't take the time to educate people and it fails, you have to wait another generation or 20 years. And if you do, the timing's important. If you do it while Danielle is still the premier, and she's kind of expressed an opinion that she's not in, she wouldn't be a very willing negotiator if the referendum goes our way. So, but if a referendum, if 1 million Albertans come out and say, yes, we want this, then does that give her the mandate, or would she simply step aside and anyways? So I think it's moving fast, but I thought you were alluding to, I had another meeting last week, which was fascinating. So I can't divulge everything about that meeting because we agreed to follow the Chatterhouse rules. You've heard of those? Mm-hmm. So, but let's just say that this was an influential person, a person with means, money, okay, who just reached out to a whole bunch of people. So I get this call from someone who says, "Hey, Marty, we're getting together a bunch of people. Do you want to show up at the, I don't even remember the name. It's kind of like the Petroleum Club in Calgary, but the Ranchmen's Club in Calgary, an old historic club, right? Do you want to just come out here and have a chat?" I'm like, sure, I'm cool with that. We'll buy you a turkey sandwich and give you a Diet Coke. Literally, that's what it was. I show up there and I'm like, whoa. And I can name some of the people, right? Like, whoa, Preston Manning. Whoa, I didn't expect Preston Manning to be here. And then, okay, Cam Davis from that group, Jeff Rath from whatever, APP. And then I have no idea who you are, but they brought 20 of us. And all that person did was facilitate discussion among ourselves. And we were not solutioning. We weren't doing anything. We were just each had a turn to talk. And it was about 90 minutes. And I had the opportunity to voice some of my concerns. And so did everybody else. But then we all walked away kind of thinking, okay, there's many of us on the same page. We're all moving there. And we kind of have this sort of gentleman's agreement through this benefactor that we need to get together at some point more often and try to find some cohesion and make sure we're all paddling in the same direction. So it was really cool. There was tempers, there was knives, there was some ugly moments, but it was also it gave me hope. Like literally, I tweeted after that. I said, for the first time because prior to this meeting, like just going to the APP events and the other ones, my gut feeling is like, we're gonna screw this up. We're gonna screw this up. That's my gut feeling, right? And so yeah, so it's happening, and I'm feeling optimistic about it, but it's complicated, and there's a lot of moving pieces.
Yeah, some of the complexity that's amplified if you don't have crosstalk. So I'm glad to hear that there's at least some dialogue going on. And not everybody has to be on the same page. You don't need to subscribe to the exact same plan, but if you agree on some of the common things that can hurt or detrimental, like, okay, can we all avoid doing A, B, and C because that's going to set us backwards? Some things for optics, like, if we do this, what's the perception? And we need to get more of these moderates on the side. Like, what are some of those ideas as well? Like, there's a lot of ways to strategize without having to all be doing the exact same thing.
Yeah, and my current observation right now is that it's going to have to be a combination of all of the above, because one can fail, right? Like, what if the referendum fails? Then the guys who are the separatists will go, "I told you so." Now we're option B, right? But are they mutually exclusive? What if the referendum succeeds, but another group managed to elect 2 or 3 separatists? Like, what if the Republican Party gets 3 members in the House of in the legislature? I think that's a perk, right? And everybody's worried that, oh, well, they're going to split the vote. Well, the Conservatives do that to themselves. I live in Cochrane Airdrie. The Conservatives just kicked out my MLA, Peter Guthrie, because he spoke out about the budget. So they kicked him out. So I'm like, one group is telling me you're going to split the vote, but then I'm like, split the vote. The party just did it to itself. Yeah. So, as far as I'm concerned, the Republican Party should run a candidate in Cochrane as soon as possible, because it's already a vacant seat. And so they're going to run one in Disbury, Old Three Hills. There's no risk. I mean, there's a by-election is a perfect time to elect a fringe party or an independent, because it doesn't change the dynamic, the balance of power right now. So back to my thought, I think all of them need to move at the same time. You and I, the 3 of us were at the AGM. I'm at the AGM because I'm still trying to affect the party from within, right? I still think that's one of the most effective things. I mean, I'm not really in favor of another, Wild Rose, another right-leaning party. I'd rather work with the existing one. But if it doesn't work, because some of the things Danielle has said lately, not even what Danielle said. I mean, Danielle said some things that make me worried, like that she's not a separatist at heart, that she's more of a federalist. But I also think she has these huge blind spot. I keep coming back to that. I think she's being played in a sense. So I just worry about her. And then when it comes to the APP, I have a lot of worries about them. I mean, I admire what they're doing, their educational campaign. They're gathering a lot of signatures and stuff like that. But then they're not politicians, man. they're lawyers and doctors and whatever else, and they're well intentioned, but I think they have huge, like when I ask them like what happens after, it's a bit of a blank stare. Like, who negotiates for us? Are you guys going to form a party? So, I think all three, and maybe there's a fourth option or a fifth. I don't even know what those might be, but I think I think in the end we're going to need all of them if we want to be successful.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm curious if maybe if you can speak to in either of these meetings, when I've had this discussion with people, just in my day-to-day life, my coworkers, my family, the two most common responses I get is from somebody who's maybe sympathetic to the idea, who kind of gets it, maybe is a little bit right-leaning anyway, is sounds good, but it's never going to happen in my lifetime. And then the second response I get from somebody who's either on the fence or not in favor of it is they immediately start thinking about pensions. Well, my pension is going to disappear. The government's going to, there's no way they're going to get that or recover that money from the feds. Well, were either of those topics any sort of major topic of discussion, or have you heard that kind of tossed around, those major objections?
They're all they're always tossed. I mean, those are major objections. The other one is what happens to my Canadian passport, what happens to my citizenship, what happens to the currency. I mean, there's a million questions, right? The two best answers to that is, first of all, like, the best answer to that is to try and remind people that you are in an abusive relationship. Like, if you're in an abusive relationship, if you're a battered spouse, or if you're in an abusive relationship, at some point, like, even if you have money in the bank or whatever, there's certain things like you might have to sacrifice something. You're either in an abusive relationship or you're not. If you're in an abusive relationship, then all of that is immaterial. You got to get the hell out. So that's the first thing. But all those things are very minor. Like, they can all easily be addressed. And unfortunately, some people address it very hyperbolically, right? Can the pension be addressed? Absolutely. Like, how? I'm like, the mechanism already exists, right? If you're an Albertan and you or an Ontarian and you contributed to the pension, it's still yours, even if you go live to the US or whatever. So that, the examples already exist in place. What was the other one?
Just the general apathy of, there's just no way that this could possibly happen in my lifetime.
No, it can happen. I mean, it's happened around the world. Many nations have done it. Scotland did it. Variations have been done throughout history, in recent history and in long history. So it can be done. The problems can be solved. Bruce Party has a great answer for that, right? Like, Bruce always says, like, you're literally in uncharted territory. Like, the courts have ruled after the Quebec referendum, like the Clarity Act, it's called, like, it's pretty clear. If a majority of people in a province decide that they want to separate or do something and give a mandate to their premier, then there is a negotiation. After that, everything is political. Everything's a negotiation, like the currency, the borders, the pensions, the debt, everything. So like, when people say you can't do it because, it's like, nope, it's black and white. If we negotiate, it's all negotiable. There's nothing preventing it from happening. So, but so I go back to, it can be done. My thoughts is I'm at the point where it has to be done. I really truly believe that we are in an abusive relationship that will never get better. So it has to be done. That's my opinion. It has to be done. And then I tell people, don't worry about the pension. That's peanuts. Dream big. Like, dream big. Like, what can we do? Like Bruce said, we can lead the way. Like, you're worried about a pension? Like, your Canada pension $790 a month right now if you contributed the maximum for the last 30 years. What if we live in a country? What if we are Alberta and we prosper and we don't have to waste 60% of your taxes are going to Ottawa? Imagine if they all stayed here. You could literally I can literally imagine a province where we pay almost no taxes and everybody gets a pension. So, like, that's the better answer, right? Dream big. Don't we're in an abusive relationship. Let's get the hell out of it.
Yeah.
And then let's dream big, because the big dream, that's the cool stuff. And then the other thing I don't like about some of the groups right now, they're making it almost all economic, right? Like, oh, you'll save your pension and you'll save a few bucks. You'll have more money in your pocket at the end of the day. It's like, man, that's secondary to me. I need to get out of this abusive relationship because I'm losing my identity.
Yeah.
I'm literally in a province where I have to beg for my money back from those guys, and it comes back with conditions that I don't even agree with. They want me to do net zero. They'll only give me a pipeline if I do it their way. They'll only let me keep certain guns so that I can barely go hunting. I'm like, wow, like, okay, like, so one-on-one, I can, we got to get to that point where one-on-one, we can all win over people who are a skeptic.
Sorry, James.
What you're describing as
just reminds me of just ahead. Like two quick. Marty, your experience is in pipelines and engineering, and I'm in. I've always been in sales. My basically my whole working adult life, and just two things you said reminded me of two sayings I've heard in the business over the years. Of the first one being that just because it's not for sale doesn't mean it can't be bought, and and the other one being never be so sure about what you want that you wouldn't take a better deal.
Right.
And that we can apply to the Indigenous bands who are currently, some of them are very vocal right now.
Oh my God. Like, and that's where guys like Keith Wilson and Jeff Rath have actually great answers, and Bruce Party. Like, like, really, you want to stay, like, I'm in an abusive relationship. Where do you think the First Nations in this country are? Yeah. Like, you guys you're so abused, and you want more, which is that's where the psychologists actually come in, right? A lot of people have been so abused that now they're into the Stockholm syndrome.
Yeah.
Like, they don't want to leave.
Yeah, that's right.
So yeah. You guys got to get Bruce on your show. Like, I'll facilitate the introduction. I'll tell him, like, you got to have him on the show, because
I would love to chat with Bruce. Like,
he explained some of this, and he actually, I was on a space with Bruce the other day, and I kept saying, like, God, shame on me. Like, I'm such an Albertan that I've almost forgotten what I was fighting for. And then he would remind me of what I was fighting for. I'm like, oh my God, thank you for reminding me. Like, I was like, I forgot about that. Like, he's the one who brought up the dream big thing. And I was like, yeah, thank you.
Positive vision for the future. Yeah. That's the key is if we're focused. Like, you could spend a lot of time just talking about grievances, but what is the vision? And you can have different visions. You could have the APP with their vision if they develop more of a vision other than just saying the benefits. And we're talking about a vision. We're like, well, what are the values? Like, potentially, like, what's the actual, are we still Westminster? Have we departed from that? Like, what's the foundation? And then I guess it's more that if you're selling people on the vision, that is the hope for the future, more than just stopping the hurt. It's the, like, how do we get to a place that we're flourishing?
The divorce analogy, or the marriage analogy, is very good in this situation. It resonates very much with a lot of people, right? Like, you at some point you're talking about divorce. You've been unhappy for years. You just got to jump in with, to throw caution to the wind and get divorced. You'll figure out where you're going to live. You'll figure out who you'll marry down the road. You'll figure out what'll happen, but you can't overthink about it. You got to do it. And right now, a lot of people are still overthinking it. And what kind of constitution are we going to have? What kind of this? What kind of that? It's like, no, we got to. That's why I'm excited about the referendum. I'm excited about the referendum because it is that. It is throw caution to the wind and get it done. But I'm scared shitless of the referendum, because when I look at recent, when I look in the last 80 years in Alberta and in Canada, there's rarely ever been any issue that has garnered 50% of the popular vote. No, it's been not since the 1970s, I think, that we've had an actual federal party win the popular vote, like, with a real majority. And then even issues locally, like like we had a referendum here on should we end equalization, and we still didn't get 60% on that. I'm like, wow, like you'd think that would be a no-brainer. I guess the only thing we all agree on is climate change. Apparently 97% of us agree that man-made climate change. But yeah, that worries me, that if the referendum rule is 50% or higher, like most referendums in recent history in the US have required super majorities, which is like 66.6. I mean, or if that was the rule, I would say pump the brakes. Like
it's gonna take some more time to brew. I just had a couple key kind of observations of the dynamic that's going on. So you've got the Alberta Prosperity Project, and they're paving the way. They've got a lot of support. They've got a lot of communication going on. They've got some good messaging, decent framework with their website. They're maybe pushing a little bit too fast. They seem a little overconfident on a few things that they're jumping in without maybe giving that full time for that support to build outside of these town halls, which may give them a perspective that the support is actually higher than what it actually is. And I don't see the Alberta Republicans being something that can't coexist beside. I think there's a place, and if people are worried about the Alberta Republicans hurting the movement, they should be concerned about the UCP hurting the movement, or the UCP doing things that will ultimately hurt conservatives or change the perception of what conservatives, like, if we should trust any of them.
That's an argument that's a great argument that's brought up frequently. Like if you're worried about the Republicans splitting the vote and the NDP getting in, then you've just told me then we're not ready for a referendum, and we might as well forget about it altogether, because if generally speaking, the NDP will not vote for a separation. So if you think that NDP are still a threat, and you use that as an excuse to discount one or the other options, you're dead in the water. So, I think this is my observation. There's still personalities at play, right? There's, like, in both groups, there's personalities that have been at this now for 20, 30, or 40 years. And many have done this and have got and are still doing it. And those personalities, the egos are getting in the way. Yeah. That's one of my biggest fear right now, is the egos are going to get in the way. And the personalities with baggage.
Or somebody will say, like, oh, I've been doing this 20, 30 years, and we saw this 20 years ago, and this kind of looks like what happened 20 years ago, therefore it will automatically turn out the same way. Or like they may attribute patterns from before to what's happening now, but we are in a different landscape. So these things have to be addressed kind of on a case-by-case basis. You can't...
Yeah, and we're just spitballing. The other thing that worries me right now is, I was looking at this week a lot, the demographics of the country, of the province, right? Alberta in 2025 is not the Alberta that I grew up in, not even close. Like, it's so, if I wish we could have done this in 1990, but I'm worried that the demographics, that there literally is 1 million people that have only been here for 2-3 years. Like that's a fact, right? Like, it's a huge percent of our population's only been here a very short time. And for them, like, if you came here from India or God knows where else, as far as you're concerned, man, life is good. It's actually surprising how many people I encounter in my day-to-day life that go, you guys are worried about nothing, man. Life is good. I'm like, wow, okay. So that worries me. Yeah. Like, and then,
well, that's by design.
Carney can just,
it's by design, right?
Yeah, totally. And Carney can say a whole bunch of things without ever having to act on it. Like, he can promise the end of the world for the next 18 months, which I think he's kind of doing. And then, and not just Carney. I mean, I'm deep in that separatist movement. The attacks online are vicious. Like, and we haven't seen anything yet. I mean, if this really starts to get momentum, the other side will mobilize against us from all places, from everywhere.
That's a huge thing. That's a huge thing, Marty. And it's something that we've noticed take any conservative or libertarian talking point over the last, decade. If there's one thing that's universal, it's that when a leftist gets it in their head that they need to oppose something, they will find a way to organize 1,000 people overnight to your 100 people that are committed activists for the other side. It's just something that they really, really excel at, and it's going to be a constant hurdle. It's like when you're watching a hockey game, Marty, and you say, oh man, our team is fighting against the other team and the refs tonight. That's what it's like to try and be on this side of the argument right now.
Well, they've already shown some of those strategies. I mean, they're already trying to get their own petition, right? If they get a petition that says we want to stay, it's the same as a petition that says we want to go. But if they're faster than us and they get more people to come out and vote for it, then they take the wind out of our sails, and that's underway. The petition rules are going to be tough, man. The petition rules. I live in close enough to Calgary, and I helped to to try and get petitions and signatures for to recall Gondek last year. And I think like in 90 days, we got 140,000 paper petition, and then they were all rejected at the last minute because we failed to follow certain little protocols. I mean, they have to be notarized. They have to be written in a certain kind of ink on a certain size paper, blah, blah, blah. Like they're more valuable than ballots. And there's stricter rules than voting kind of thing.
There's like
fascinating.
2 raindrops on one of the forums and you're like, oh, it's invalid now. So
invalid, gone. Yeah. And then, so it'll be interesting. So I'm still open-minded following. I see, in the short term, I hope that the one meeting that I went to with that Benefactor, I hope all the groups come back and re-energize or re-coordinate. I truly love what the Alberta Prosperity Project's doing. I just want them to slow down a little bit and focus on education during the summer. And then I'm going to throw my backing behind the Alberta Republican parties in this by-election. I mean, I'm adamant about that. There's nothing to be lost in Olds Three Hills if they elect Cam Davies. Like, what do you got to lose? I mean, it's not going to change the balance of power, and it's just going to send a message to the current premier. Like it,
having that political pressure, I think will be really good.
Yeah. So, interesting times. Yeah, for sure.
Maybe as just a final note here before we go on to our super secret final topic unrelated to all of this. One thing that I don't know if we've mentioned this before in any of our other interviews. There's a quote that I really love from. Do you know who Michael Malice is, Marty?
I heard the name, but remind me.
He's
quick.
a podcaster. Yeah. He's an author as well. He's written some good books. He's a political guy. But he has he had a quote about how leftists and conservatives communicate, and he was talking about how leftists they don't use language to communicate or to educate. They use it to manipulate. And if there was a message that I could get along through you to this Benefactor or for anyone else who's influential in this movement, is that we have to be aware of that, because that's something that we're going to be up against. Is that we're going to be we tend to have, and this is not meant to pump any of us up, boost our egos at all, but generally speaking, it's been my experience, having been on both sides of the political aisle in my life and now being where I am, that people on the very hyper liberal end of the spectrum, they sort of view their causes and their pet projects as like very kind of biblical and very like good versus evil, and like they take it as a very it's hard to be objective when it's so emotional for them, and they will do whatever it takes to try and scare people and manipulate them into not allowing people to go to what they view as an evil outcome. It's not a matter of right and wrong, it's a matter of good and evil. So that's something that we need to watch out for and kind of be, it's you never want to necessarily, sink to the level of your opponent, but you do want to be aware of how to counter that sort of very emotionally charged rebuttal that we're going to get.
Yeah, no, I'm certainly aware of those kinds of dynamics. I mean, there are definitely distinguishing traits between the two sides. The one you mentioned. I mean, the other issue we have on our side these days is the separatists slash conservatives by definition are individuals. And so, boy, when you and individuals that are almost, self-reliant, and so bringing together individuals by definition is not going to happen because they're individuals. They don't belong to groups. So it's
even the word
I'm feeling optimistic.
Separatist
Good.
is
What's
one.
That?
Even the word separatist is one that, like, I've started using Alberta independence more than Alberta separation, partially just to help reinforce that positive vision, because I think the people will start using separation more in a negative connotation, even though we don't use it in that way from the outside. Like, it will be turned into a slur, and independence has a bit of resistance to being turned into.
I'm trying to, so help me out on this one, because I 100% agree. I'm trying to get away from the word separatist, but what's the adjective for independent?
Yeah.
Because I hate to say I'm an independent, so it's like, am I an independentist or whatever? So I want to come up with a good, or is it an adjective or a noun or whatever? But I think
adjective is right.
Instead of, yeah,
I'm gonna, we're gonna ask Grok. You guys talk.
Yes. So, because sovereignist rings well, right? You could say I'm a sovereignist, I'm a separatist, but I'm not. I'm an independentist. So, what's the proper terminology for?
You kind of need something sellable in an elevator. Like,
no, that was brought up at that Benefactor meeting where. By the way, that was the first time I'd been to a meeting where somebody said, before the meeting, like they shredded a little piece of paper and said, we're going to share the Chatterhouse rules or whatever the hell it is. And I agreed to it. Then I read it and I was like, oh shit, I agreed to this. Fuck, now I can't talk about it. No, I can talk about what was discussed, but I can't attribute to whom. I can't say which party or which group said what, but I can definitely say that,
that gives a little bit of insulation from the egos as well. Like, it avoids the finger pointing and avoids this back talk afterwards.
Let's just say we had a few lawyers in the room, and man, like, they're lawyers. They're just like, holy shit. Like, they call each other my brother or my colleague or my respected colleague, and they still carry on that way, but then they're just
okay. So guys, Grok seems to think that some good alternatives would be to say that you're an Alberta autonomist or an Alberta sovereigntist.
Yeah,
both of those are good.
Autonomist, autonomist. I like. I like autonomist. Sovereigntist, I don't like. The reason I don't like sovereignist is like what happened last week just pissed me off to no end. Like when the king of another country comes here to help reinforce our sovereignty, I'm like, can you folks not see the complete insanity of what's going on here? Like, that whole, I was on the treadmill running downstairs. Instead of going outside, I stayed indoors to watch the throne speech. And I wanted to throw everything at the TV that I had. I was like, did you guys watch it? I mean, like, it's you got the 9 Supreme Court judges with their red and white seal fur coats, and then you got 13 lieutenant generals, and you got all the former prime ministers, and you got all the Indian chiefs with their feathers, and you got like just a giant crowd of people that are sucking off the government tit that are congratulating each other for doing nothing. And then the host constantly talking about, in a whispered voice, the VIP gallery or the dignitaries. I'm like, oh my God, the dignitaries. Like, and then the king can't go into the the king has to read the speech from the Senate because the House of Commons is where commoners gather. And then I'm like, oh my God, like
this pageantry, this just bullshit.
Oh,
that circles
and
back
then the other
to.
thing.
So Bruce has specifically talked about, like, part of the Canadian identity is the fact that we're not American. So we're opposed, like, it was a opposition to being American and a vote in the direction of we are going to be subjects in a way. It was the identity part of the Canadian identity is compliance in a way. So a lot of this talk, you see Daniel Smith reaching out, and it hinges on, well, almost like begging the federal government to do something for us or to change the ways, rather than us thinking about from the Alberta side, like from the foundational level of being like, well, we are asserting our own sovereignty from the ground up as a people, rather than trying to ask somebody else to give it to us. And I think that's part of the culture shift that needs to happen, because right now we're still waiting for somebody else to give it.
It's a beta mindset, right, James?
Yes.
Bingo. And then another way to help people with that thought is, imagine that that there was a country called Alberta today, and we're super prosperous and everything's going for us. And then this guy from Ottawa comes over and says, "Hey, do you guys want to join our confederation?" And we'd say, "Okay, what's in it for us?" Man, like, what would Ottawa offer a prosperous Alberta today that would make me want to go, yeah, we got a king over there and we got these guys dressed in these funny suits and we do this and we do that. Yeah, no thanks. By the way, I just want to add this one little bit of also that made, you're right. So they for 50 years, because we're next door to this giant elephant, we had to do something. So we convinced ourselves that the Canadian identity was, we're not American. It's pretty simple. It is that, plus a few other nuances. But the other thing last week that annoyed me of the throne speech is, we just lived through a decade of Trudeau trying to push forward, this post-national state, and they erased the Canadian identity, going as far as redesigning our passports and whatever. And while after I watched this throne speech, I went and grabbed my old passport. I'm like, oh, look at that. The RCMP musical ride. Yeah, that was there yesterday. Oh, natives jumping around. Yeah, that was there yesterday. Oh, the Peace Tower. Yeah. Oh, they didn't have the schooner. They didn't have a beaver. But anyways, like, they literally brought out so much over the top symbolism that day. For one day out of the last 10 years, they wanted us to go back to being Canadian when it was convenient, right? Because, and again, we're not Trump, right? So we're not. And I was like, wow, why? Well, I should have just brought my passport to the meeting and then just flipped through there while you read the throne speech, and I would have been reminded of what it used to be like to be Canadian. But you guys threw that all out. So let's change topics. It was
okay, perfect. Let's
segue to Trump.
Let's talk about speaking about how we're not Americans. What a shit show today was on Twitter. Hey, holy Christ! Elon Musk and Donald Trump. Who would have thought their little lovers' quarrel would spill over into the public eye as much as it has?
So help me out though. So I missed how it started. So what happened while I was gone? So did Trump introduce the bill? Like, how did Trump and Elon have a bit of a parting of ways earlier this week?
I think that's the idea. Maybe James knows a little bit more specifics than I do, but I know that there was, so in his like big beautiful bill, as it's called, I think.
Okay, that's the word. Yeah,
I think Elon was already suspect of it just because of its, what a massive spending, addition it's going to put into the treasury, but or take out of the treasury rather. But also, I think it removes some protections or some subsidies that Tesla was receiving for EVs. I think that's a significant part of it too, and I don't think he was expecting that. Trump said today that they already talked about it. He was already aware of it. Elon says that he wasn't. I don't know, James, do you know any more about that preamble there?
I did see a quote from a few years ago where Elon specifically saying that they should end EV incentives, because partially because if it's going to survive on its own, it should be viable enough. So it's hard to know how much of it, a factor that is, or if there was some ideological differences of the spirit behind Doge was not able to be fulfilled. And so Elon's potentially upset.
There's nuances to it, but on the very, very simple level, I mean, Elon worked his butt off to identify waste, and then Trump goes and does this big bill that throws a whole bunch of waste back in there, including stuff that will affect Elon one way or another. And then Elon fired back with a doozy.
Holy.
Wow. Can you bring up that tweet, or can you just
let me find
put
it.
it
I'll
up,
find it here
or
for sure.
find it? Yeah, I mean, it was right this afternoon. Like I did not have that on my bingo card. Not even
like
close.
throws a bomb into Twitter that's like, oh, I guess this is the whole timeline now.
Yeah, it was a bomb, right? I mean,
yeah.
and I haven't looked lately. How big is Elon's following? He must be in the 200 million people.
I think it's
like
right around there. Yeah,
about a tenth of everybody on Twitter follows Elon.
Yeah. Here she is. Time to drop the really big bomb. Real Donald Trump is in the Epstein files. That is the reason they have not been made public. Have a nice day, DJT. Now,
wow.
I had two immediate responses to this. First of all, I showed everyone around me at the time my phone, like, holy Christ, can you believe that? And then my second reaction was like, well, wait, like, well, I guess I had three reactions. My second reaction was, well, wait, like, if they had, I mean, the government's had the Epstein files for years, so why wouldn't the Biden admin have released it, or even prior to that, if it was such a bombshell that, if they wanted to discredit Trump rather than making up bullshit like piss tape allegations from Russian hackers or whatever. But then my third reaction, finally, to close off that thought was, oh, it's because they're all in it. Democrats, Republicans, all these fucking animals, they're all in the files.
Yeah. Well, coincidentally, earlier in the day, I had already noted, I follow the stock markets and I invest. So earlier in the day, I'd already noticed that Twitter, or that Tesla had taken a bit of a dive early in the day. So I put out a tweet there, saying, hey, maybe it's time to jump back in, and wasn't going to. It was just a tweet. And then 2 hours later, I'm like, holy shit, I'm glad I didn't jump back in, because when I made that comment, Tesla was down about $14. I think it ended the day down $50. Like, that's Tesla is a $2 trillion company. So when it loses 10% like that in a day, that's $200 billion in the market cap.
Jesus Christ.
Like, that's Alberta's GDP.
Yeah.
Like,
in a day.
Gone.
Yeah.
In a day.
So is now the time to invest? Should I get my shekels out?
Then I did a follow-up post later in the day, which is, who's more trustworthy, Trump or Elon? And my followers gave Elon an 80% vote.
Interesting.
And I think they're attributing that to him being a geek and him being passionate about a mission. I think he's been fairly true to himself, right? He's an innovator with a mission and finding efficiencies in his DNA. And so and Trump, I mean, yeah, as a Canadian right now, I was a little pissed off at Trump, and now I'm like, okay, this is interesting. So yeah, my money's on Elon. To your question, yes, there's a time to jump back into Tesla, because everything Elon touches, he's got the Midas touch, and I know he's going to pivot the factory to do something else. If it's not EVs, so be it. He built this amazing factory. He'll use that factory to make robots.
Yep.
Or something else.
Well, they're making Tesla bots right now, I think.
Are they?
So.
Okay.
I think so. Yeah, they want to have them on the market soon. But yeah, I guess the other thought too to consider is that, maybe all of this is some political theater of sorts that we're just not aware of what the actual goal is,
So yes, to speak to the 4D chess, I love this theory because if Donald Trump is not in the Epstein files, like right now, it's encouraging the Democrats are now calling for the Epstein files.
Oh.
So I'm like, well, that could be a way of
finally getting them to,
because there hasn't been much traction.
Yeah,
so I don't know. It's hard to know.
I
for
know.
Sure.
I love that. That's I think you and we've talked about this. Like the engineer in me just knows how complicated it is to do stuff. So I don't believe in conspiracies anymore, and I don't even believe in
But you don't believe any less.
Chess, never mind. Yeah, but now, but lately, I'm like, holy shit! Are there people that brilliant that? Actually, I watched a movie the other day. It was one of those. Salt was like that, and other movies. Like, are there people who think 20 years in advance? some people say that the Russians and some institutions have been thinking 20, 30 years in advance, and then at the right moment, something is sprung on us,
I've heard that
Like-
the military, like the very advanced militaries in the world, the U.S., Mossad, like other super high-tech militaries in the world, I have heard that they possess tech that's approximately 20 years. Like, it's not that it's 20 years more advanced. It's just that, like, the stuff that we have now on the consumer end is stuff that they had 20 years ago. You know what I mean?
No, but that I get. No, I was referring to like people, like
like playing
did
extra long games.
Did the Russians plant, somebody as an aide in the White House and let him climb through the ranks for 20 years, and then in his 25th year, he's like, "Hey, guess what? Like
it may be a combination of things where they're thinking ahead and then also knowing that like things change. So like, well, we put a few things into motion, and then they're like, well, that kind of fizzled out, but options C and F are still like." Maybe we try to unload some of the built up, like you almost get these snowball effects. So there's like some gravity, some like potential energy in these that can be steered in a way. You may not always get, like, you can't predict exactly what that will turn into, but there's the potential. And if you're able to steer it in like your favor or against your favor, like that's all you need to like make some big shifts on the things that matter.
and then I do admire Americans in general, and I have worked with a lot of Americans, and I'll say this, like the average American is kind of a dummy, but their top brilliant minds are brilliant. And so I have worked with brilliant Americans, and I know that there are brilliant Americans working in places like the CIA and in government. They have strategists that we can't even dream of. Like, I've worked with strategists at work, and I'm like, and you go, you're barely a strategist, And so I'm pretty sure there's some pretty skookum American people, deep thinkers, deep thinkers.
Well, and speaking of deep too, there's always, you got to consider the deep state, which is one of the, like, that's, I think Vivek, like Ramaswamy was talking, would talk about that a lot, where like deep state is sort of a bad term for it because it's not like, it makes it sound like more clandestine than it is. But, we all basically found out by the end of, I mean, some of us knew earlier than others, but we all basically found out by the end of Biden's term that there was just absolutely no way that he was running the government. So it would be, just as it would be foolish to believe that he was running the government for 4 years, it would also be foolish to believe that overnight, just because of an election, the people who are actually controlling the government aren't still controlling it in at least some meaningful way now.
Right. And then I turn to our Canadian Parliament and go, yeah, no, there's no deep state here.
There's barely a shallow state.
No, there's still a layer of
installed, right?
bureaucracy, and there's teams. Like, the thing is, you can put different people in the face of it, but there's still structures working in the background. They may or may not be as brilliant as other countries,
as sophisticated.
So, or maybe we'll lean into the 4D chess. Maybe they just appear stupid, but they're smarter than they look. So,
by the way, I've heard the term 4D chess, but is there actually 4D chess?
Isn't the fourth dimension time? Isn't all chess played over time?
Yeah, like I'm trying to think, how would you play 4D chess? Do you play with 2 boards or 3 boards, and then you play with 3? Because I know there's 3-dimensional chess, but would there be
4D chess? You have to be on some really special psychedelics to fully comprehend it.
Yeah,
Marty. Speaking of, I was hoping that you would comment on my whiskey like you always do. You haven't asked me what I'm drinking yet.
Yeah, you read my mind. I was just about to ask, but I thought, did I ask? Maybe I shouldn't ask. So what are you drinking?
I got the bottle ready for it. I told my wife. She asked me why I'm bringing the bottle in here, as if I'm gonna like get pissed on stream with you here. But no, it's because I wanted to show you my very special bottle of. I think I'm mirrored right now, but this is Tabor corn.
No, I can read it. It says Bridgeland.
Yeah. This is Alberta bourbon made with Tabor corn, except it's not actually bourbon. If you look, it's spelt wrong with a B, because they can't actually call it bourbon because it doesn't come from Kentucky and it hasn't been aged for 3 years. So it's pretty young. It's not that good.
to be bourbon, it has to be aged in an oak barrel as well,
Yeah.
right? That's been burned, and we don't have oak here. Although I guess we could get. Actually, while I was on my hike, I brought a bottle of 3-year-old rum, batch number 1 from Two Rivers Distillery in Calgary.
Okay.
I'll have to give those guys a shout out. That was
it good?
Yeah, Marty drank a bottle by himself on the trail, but
that's why you weren't hurting.
No. Yeah, awesome. Hey, I want some pemmican next time we meet. Like,
I'll have to make some more. I technically have old pemmican, but so
I'll bring
forgot
you moose. I'll bring you the moose, man. Actually, the moose draws are due right now. I have to. I was talking about that. My buddy's coming over tomorrow. We're gonna. There's 6 of us that go hunting every year, and then so we strategize on who puts in their draws. No sense all of us having a moose draw because we can't use 6 moose. But I think it's going to be my moose, and making pemmican, real pemmican would be.
If you bring some,
awesome.
I'll make a fresh batch. All I have is 200 grams that I forgot about 2 years ago, because it's actually been a little while since I've made like a new batch. So I had one old batch, and then I realized, it's still good.
Yeah, it's not technically old, is it? Yeah.
No, and I tried it. It's still perfectly, hasn't changed a single bit. And it's I made it without berries, so it's that's the stuff that lasts decades. Like the berry, when you make it with berries, it will reduce its shelf life a little bit, but it'll go from lasting half a decade to multiple decades.
And this will be sort of the closing topic, but. When I go hiking and people would see me eating cheese on my videos and sausage, and they'd be like, "Aren't you afraid it's unrefrigerated?" And I'm like, "Where do you people live? Do you not understand that cheese is a way to preserve milk, sausage is a way to preserve meat, whiskey is a way to preserve corn." Or rye. I mean, and American bourbon, the colonists that came here, instead of having to give their leftover crop to the King of England, suddenly they're here and they're like, "What? I can keep my crop at the end of the year? Well, I have too much corn." What do you do with your corn? You mash it, you turn it into bourbon, and you drink it for breakfast. The colonists would drink bourbon for breakfast because it's energy.
Yeah.
So when I'm on a hike and I'm drinking a rum or a whiskey, eating my cheese with a piece of sausage, folks, I'm living the dream, and I'm doing what humans have forgotten to do. God. And people ask me all the dumbest questions, what do you do about water? I drink it out of the creeks. What?
You can do that? It doesn't have to come from a bottle?
You can do. Yeah, no, it can come from a creek.
I think people are a little disconnected to how Canada was even how the West was even established in a way. It took some people doing some difficult things, putting a lot of miles in tough conditions, but these had plenty of strategies for how to get your needs met along the way.
We had tough ancestors who would be who are rolling in their grave looking at what's happening to this country right now. And so we got to respect those guys, and we got to do something about our country. Great chat, guys. I'm pumped. This was an awesome chat.
Thanks.
Awesome
Thanks,
chat.
man. We really appreciate it.
Great to have you on.
Coming and spending some time with us as always.
Yeah. Awesome. Go Oilers.
Yes, sir. Let's go Oilers in 5.
All right. Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
See ya.